Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Meds and Magic. It's me, Samantha, and I'm so pleased to have my dear sister, Dr. Stephanie Wright here with us. We're going to have a conversation that is really going to take a dive into what it means to heal, totally mind, body, and spirit. So I'm so happy to have her here with us. We're just going to get into it. So
I'm so happy to be here with you.
this is fun. This is going to be fun. So, can you tell us a little bit about like your origin story? Like she's a psychologist right now, working one-on-one with clients. And I know her story of how she came to this healing profession is very similar to mine. Ultimately, we both feel very called to do this type of work where we help people transform themselves into the better version of themselves that they were already born to be. But we both sort of went that traditional route of me nursing school with her psychology. So tell the folks about your origin story. What do you feel is pertinent to
Well,
how you showing up now?
I've always been like the counselor archetype.
Okay.
I've always kind of embodied that throughout my whole life, even as a kid. I can remember, being the one listening to my friends and consulting with them on the school playground. Or like to connect with people. And so
The mediator.
I've always kind of had that role. I'm an INFP. Okay, I used to be an INFJ for a long time, but this is the Myers-Briggs type.
I was like, why do I know those letters?
It's the Myers-Briggs type. I'm big on the archetype.
Yes, you are. You are.
For personality. So I've tested INFJ for a long time,
Okay.
in my younger years. And then in my adult years, I started testing INFP. So it's interesting, but they both fall into the idealist category.
Okay.
They're both very intuitive feelers and listeners. We connect with people, we connect with humanity. You might find these type of people in the art or even in psychology in the field of counseling. So I've always kind of had the archetype. So that kind of steered the direction. As you know, I studied music before I studied psychology because I still have a very deep passion and connection for music and the arts. But ultimately, it felt like a good career path to go down. So that's kind of like the beginning parts of me entering into psychology. But I've always been deeply spiritual. We grew up in the church, and I've always been growing up in the Pentecostal church specifically. I've always been so very fascinated with the miracles, like
Same.
the miracles,
The tent services,
yes,
the evangelical,
the blue energy, the Holy Spirit. Like I've always been very fascinated with, that aspect of spirituality and trying to understand what is this impartation from this bigger thing that we get to connect with and sense and experience that power moving throughout our lives. So I've always been really fascinated with that aspect of Christianity. And I was also kind of secretly witchy at the same time, watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And of course now I'm laughing about this because, like talking about witchy things and Pentecostal things at the same time is just a no-no.
Seemingly,
it's a no-no. And so I did, like I said, secretly, I was so fascinated by it. I was so curious of, again, what is this power that is supposed to be something that we as humans have access to. So I've just always been deeply spiritual. I've always sought God. I've always sought this connection with a higher being, a higher power, a unity. It's just something that I've just always sensed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that somehow contributed to going to get into like, your dark night of the soul type of thing. And we're going to explain that a little bit. But I feel like similar to me and everyone really, if you're really attuned to the phases and cycles of your own life, you'll come to these junctures where literally you are hit with a shifting of the way you think about things, a shifting of, how you've been previously operating, an old program, if you will. And so you hit one of those sort of intersections during your teen years, which a lot of us hit those, during your teen years. And so for you, how did that foundation of spirituality, that spiritual connection, that experiential sort of indwelling of spirit, how did that help or harm you when you hit this
Mm,
this juncture?
yeah. You know, I'm gonna name that.
Mm.
You'll probably also hear me talk about astrology too, because I'm like, again, the archetypes and understanding the
Mm-hmm.
self and the evolution of the self. But I have a lot of really interesting eighth house and Scorpio placements in my chart, which means I'm constantly going through a dark night of the soul. At least what
Okay.
it feels like.
Okay.
It almost feels like it's a part of just how I evolve, like hitting these spots and doing this kind of evolutionary thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, like you said, in high school, like I think it was my junior or senior year of high school, I experienced a lot of depression. I actually was very anxious as a kid in
Mm.
general. I had a lot of anxiety as a kid, being introduced to topics that as a highly sensitive person, I do identify as a highly sensitive person. Being introduced to certain topics as a kid actually elicited a lot of anxiety,
Okay.
and such as like death and things like some of the intense aspects of Christianity,
Okay.
being a sinner, and some of these themes was heavy for
Heavy for
me.
you.
Yeah, and I think just life circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
We've had our challenges growing up where we grew up, and it was hard. So as a sensitive kid, I was just I was chronically anxious, but
Okay.
I hid it well.
You did. You
I hid
did.
it well, but I was pretty
Okay.
anxious. Yeah.
So that would you say that degree of masking and just I mean to me I call it resilience too. It's where we sometimes I think judge too harshly and pathologize things that are coping mechanisms for the season that you're in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I just want to bring in another aspect. Yeah, it could be it's anxious too.
Mhm.
It's coping, it's masking, it's, you're responding to the environment that you are in, given the archetype that you are, you know?
Yes.
And I love that sort of open framework because it gives you more opportunity to move with it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit because I think it's important for shadow work. If you
Yeah.
have this sort of more expansive perception of these sort of um
Uh-huh.
pathologies,
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, we'll get into it. But what I wanted to ask you was literally when you were sort of taking notice that you were, this anxious child, I don't know where it came in your understanding of yourself. Let's go back to the previous question because this is how we talk, y'all. This is how we talk. Literally, we will start with one thing and
Yeah.
branch out.
Because there's so much to a
It's too-
story. So
yeah,
I will try to stay on topic and make it
I'll try.
We'll do our best.
We'll see what happens. We will see what unfolds in this space. Work with us, flow with us. All right, let me go back.
Okay.
Okay. You were saying that how being a sensitive child, how because I asked you, did being a part of the church and those experiences with the spiritual and the
Yes.
did
You
it
were asking how it hurt or
her
helped.
harm? And how
Okay. Yeah, so let me walk you through it, right? So moving through a lot of anxiety as a kid,
uh-huh.
I hit some depression when I reached like later high school years. And I was still very heavily attached to my Christian identity
Okay.
at that time. So I did do a lot of prayer.
Okay.
You know, I literally this is again throughout my childhood because is a progression, right? I was the child that was always at the altar, feeling
Mm.
like I needed prayer, like something just constantly felt like, what is happening? How can I digest life? How can I embody this existence in a way that it doesn't feel so foreign?
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately I was contending with my level of sensitivity and picking up on so much of the undercurrents of humanity.
Yeah.
I was picking up on my own developmental stages and ages. I was picking up on family dynamics stages. I was picking up on societal norms and expectations. And I think as a child coming into this world and absorbing all of that, you're just like, what in the is this? Like, what is this existence?
Yeah.
What are these expectations? What are all these feelings? And feeling all of that. I'll say the ways that it helped me is that it did connect me with a sense that I was a part of something bigger and that I had protection that was beyond my immediate environment.
Okay.
Because sometimes that didn't necessarily feel completely safe, either physically or emotionally, for whatever
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
But I think feeling like, okay, there's a greater being that's protecting me or covering me in some way. I think that provided some sense of like coping and some
Mhm.
sense of like regulation.
Yeah.
I think the ways that it hurt me um is in the restrictive nature of
Okay.
it. Because when I'm going through something like depression and I'm having these really dark thoughts and feelings, what I didn't need was pray about it.
Gotcha.
What I actually needed was, how do we learn how to relate to our feelings and our thoughts?
Yes. Yes.
How do we process this experience that we're having? How do we learn how to be more embodied in the way that we navigate these things?
Mm.
So it was just really limited in my healing,
Yeah.
to be completely honest with it. I could pray all day and all night, and it just wasn't shaking. And that started in high school, but it went for years of
Yeah.
me trying to figure out, like, what is it? How do I find my healing
Yeah.
if I can't find it here?
Here. And I would imagine that you have that initial sort of not having the tools to be able to work through and process the healing. But then on top of that, as years progress, more isolation,
Mhm.
thinking something's wrong with you because I prayed and it ain't working,
Yeah.
and I'm doing all the things my spiritual tradition
Mhm.
sort of has leaned into and it's still not working.
How did I move through the part of it not working?
Mm.
And it was hard.
Yeah.
I sought professionals.
Okay.
I talked to a lot of different people. I came across different counselors in different places. And, I spent time in therapy myself. And it was all helpful.
Yes. You were like,
I was collecting resources to find out how to best help myself. And I think that that's such a I really encourage people to do that.
yes.
And I know now as a therapist, I get to be on one of those stops of healing
Yes.
people. And then I also don't want people to limit their healing to what happens within that therapy space, because there's so many things that can be therapeutic for you in your
Mm,
life. And I always hope that I can help people develop a whole toolbox, and that you can start here, develop your understanding of how you got to where you are, and then
mhm.
begin to unravel it and implement tools that can help you recover those aspects of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that oftentimes, to touch on, what you did was sort of organic to you in a way. Like this idea of being a collector of tools and saying, hey, this is not fully working for me. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna like keep looking for things that resonate with me. I think that's something that we all need to internalize as our path to healing. but that's not necessarily something that was taught to us. That's not something that maybe a lot of us had access to organically or intuitively, like us. How would you say someone could, on an individual level, I feel like, can you speak to what can be done to start to change in this way? And then as a community and culturally,
Yeah.
what can be done to help sort of program this into the next generation so that they won't hit these roadblocks so like forcefully like you did?
Yeah. You know, I think so I'm going to speak from my
Yes.
personal experience and then like how we can start to instill that
Mm-hmm.
collectively. From my personal experience, remember I told you I had a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Some of my anxiety was a result of what I believed I should be and
Okay.
the fact that I wasn't. So,
Okay.
you know, you remember the scripture that says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but
Mm-hmm.
of love, power, and a sound mind.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand why I had so much fear.
Mm. Yeah, I could imagine. You're like, well,
What was wrong with me that
where this
I
from?
still am terrified of so many things? Whether it's the monster underneath my bed or the dark or other people it was just like
Yes.
I had so much fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when I reached the point where it was a couple of points
Okay.
that made me move through it because I kind of was stuck. It almost felt like a survival point for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had no other options but to move through my fear.
Yeah.
Because once I recognized that the reason that I'm stuck here is because I have so
So
much
much fear.
fear, I knew that I would have to find a way to move through it.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
like being in the thing and being like, "Oh, you know what? I'm so scared to do this thing, but I think I have to do it
Yes.
because if I don't do it, that could mean my own survival,
Yes.
like my own life."
Yes.
It just got that dark for me.
Mm.
So I'm like, "You know what? I got to do it."
It was a
Like,
it was a literal like it was an internal sort of like drive to like it's either move forward or die.
either move forward or die.
And you chose, I want to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And whatever that means.
Yeah, and I also felt like I owed it to myself to
Mm.
at least I didn't know it was gonna work.
Right. Right.
I did not know that it would work
Right. Yeah.
to push forward.
It was completely unknown.
Completely unknown.
Complete unknown
And
way
I
of being.
yes, and I think that like I can appreciate how fear is
Mm.
so interwoven into our collective on so many levels. We're conditioned to fear so much stuff. Even from the beginning when I talked about my beginnings in religion and
Mhm.
Christianity, and that's snuck and watched,
Mhm.
witchy shows, but I still had a little underlying fear that I was doing something wrong,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
that this was going to send me to hell, or that God was going to be displeased with me. I was
Mhm.
chronically scared that I was doing stuff that would make
Yes.
God mad
Yes.
and it would be eternal damnation for me. And so that's like an example of like earlier conditioning
Yes.
that kind of set in, but it's systemic. Like you
Yeah.
fear your livelihood, you fear not having enough money, you fear
Mhm.
and even as a kid, I just noticed when mom would struggle sometimes. Oh, are we okay?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
we okay financially? Growing up in a single parent home. I'm
Mm.
just like, if something happens to my mom, then what's going to happen to me?
There's no backup. There's no
It was
yeah.
fear. There was a lot of
Mhm.
fear, and fear that persists and starts to build in your body becomes trauma.
Mm.
It becomes how your nervous system rewires around your own existence. It was trauma, a
Yeah.
lot of trauma that I was holding in my body.
Mm.
But I knew that at a certain point, I recognized it as fear,
Yeah.
and then I knew like I would have to figure out a way. I would have to try some stuff and I would have to keep trying
Yes.
stuff. If this stuff worked for now and then it stopped working, then I'll have to find a new thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I,
because I want it to be here.
yeah, I love that. You want it to be here. And I think what I want to highlight before you go into like what we can do
Hmm.
as a community and as a culture to support um, our inner children, ourselves, reparent ourselves, but also the literal next generation to support them. I just want to point out that what I hear you saying is there comes a point where you stop and you start to ask yourself questions. And that sort of builds an awareness of the thing. You said, when I sat and I saw that fear is really the dominating narrative for most of the behaviors and maybe most of the low moods or low sort of negative feelings that you were experiencing, a lot of them had their foundation in this underlying fear. And it seems like once you get to an awareness of that, it's like a little bit of like inspiration, a little bit of spark, a little bit of breathing room that sort of starts a process of like curiosity,
Mhm.
like you said, experimentation. You're like more open to things like that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think again, I had to move through the fear. The
Yes.
more I move through the fear, the more open I become.
Yes.
Because there is, if you just take your conditioning for face value,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we weren't really taught about therapy
Right.
as kids, right?
Right.
So there might be fear around like the right move, like am I doing the right thing, or
But like every step.
with every step. With every step, I think one thing to understand is that there will always be an opportunity to fear something. If fear is built into our survival mechanism.
It's like an ancient program,
It's
right?
such an ancient program.
Mm.
And it's evolved throughout time because earlier humans didn't need to fear things that we fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their fears were more like, is a bear going to,
Mm-hmm.
maul me to death, or, things like that, and
Like
more physical.
survival physical things.
More physical
Yeah.
survival things. We have so many comforts, and I know some people, it is still a physical
Yes.
survival
Yes.
based on the environments that they are growing up in and
Mm-hmm.
exposed to. But a lot of times it's like a threat to our sense of connection and our
Mm-hmm.
sense of safety. Because as babies, we need to feel like we belong and we need to feel like we are safe. So we rely on our caregivers' responsiveness to us for our nervous system to get wired around a sense of community and a sense of safety. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out here trying to fend for myself, knowing that I'm a baby and I can't do nothing for myself,
Right.
So it's like that is very early. It's very
Yes.
early to need a sense of safety in the world.
Yeah.
And it's so many things that can uproot that.
Yeah.
Like between birth to age 7, so
So
many
many
things can disrupt
opportunities.
that.
Yes. I almost feel like in order for us to move forward to the next level of our evolution in our consciousness, as far as when I say that, I mean moving from a dominant fear-based sort of experience or glasses, fear-based glasses of seeing the world to a more present space and then a loving space, right? After we have now sort of healed our wounds, it almost feels like there has to be a sort of approach that normalizes trauma as the baseline. And so you're healing no matter how idyllic your childhood was and how, whatever, you came out of that birth to 18 years with some sort of wiring that will need maintenance, will need adjusting, will need changing. And I feel like having that perspective will really ease some of the stuff that people come through
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
for therapy, thinking there's something wrong with them.
I do
You
think
know?
that, yes, this is another conversation that I have a lot, that I can speak to, like the collective
Okay.
challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because within the field of psychology, we learn very early, especially when we're doing experimentation, design, and understanding the bell curve. we've learned that when we're doing these types of like tests and trying to get an understanding of what the norm is, right? Because everything is graded on a norm.
Okay.
Same as in the medical field, right?
Yeah.
When you think
You
of
mean like the bell curve?
bell curve. When
Okay.
you think of development with babies, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is the norm, this weight,
Yep.
right? So we're all being measured against this bell curve.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this bell curve probably didn't include a whole lot of people in developing that even
That model.
that model to begin with, right?
Yes, it was not diverse.
It wasn't a diverse sample.
Right.
So that's the number one.
That is a big thing.
That's a major thing,
Yes.
right? So our society is so based on this idea of what's norm,
Yes.
what's the normative.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have people coming in saying, I'm not normal because I fall outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong with me because I fall outside of that. Something's wrong with me
Mm-hmm.
because I don't fit this. When I really try to help people understand that that's made up.
It's made up, y'all.
Like it's completely made up.
Yeah.
And in some ways I can understand the desire to even develop a system like that.
Yeah.
But then I see it being so harmful because I think it's causing people to feel so isolated in their experiences. Because now if you have a different experience, you don't really want to talk about it. You don't want to let other people in on it. Other people will look at you like you're not normal. Everybody collectively buys into this
That's right.
idea, right? Because it's a collective
It is.
buy-in. So
Yeah.
the more we kind of like perpetuate this idea that things that are diverse and different isn't normal.
Yeah, exactly. And what really can use, I mean, I personally, let's throw it all away, but I understand that some people still feel like that's useful. And so what I say is, all right, let's use this as a marker to ask questions, right? So if you see, I'm going to take my experience. I see 5 children that are falling within this line of typical like development, and I get one that falls outside of this. I'm not going to automatically like pathologize it. I'm not going to automatically change my energy in this therapeutic space where this is wrong. Let's fix it. Let's refer you to all 10 of these places. You know what I mean? That shift, that little shift in me as a provider telling this mom and this child that like, this is wrong and this is all the ways we're going to fix it. That literally impedes any sort of like open curiosity, questions, and it's harmful.
It's immediately slapping the limitations onto people. It's immediately putting people in these boxes. And I think it just continues that narrative for them. You know, if we think about like diagnosing, I think diagnosis can help in certain circumstances when you're navigating systems. But I also think it's so important to understand the symptoms and to understand what's happening, how these symptoms got here, and how to figure out ways to address them outside of that label.
That label.
Because the label just immediately condenses someone to this thing when really they are a vast array of experiences and archetypes and all of these things that build who they are and their experience.
So how can I don't know if you are aware, there's a book called The Anxious Generation that came out. And it's really speaking to the introduction of technology into this next generation's, like, introducing it during those birth to 18 years, like shifting their developmental wiring to a more like immediate gratification. A lot of this technology, I was thinking like literally last week, how my girls don't have to wait for TV shows. Like they can just stream whenever they want and then binge. Like that's in their that's in their verb, their dialogue is, I'm going to binge this. Oh, that's so bingeable. And it's like how literally so the book, and I don't know the author, I'll put it in the comment section, but it's literally talking about how this is creating sort of this anxiety in us. So what do you see as like going back to what you're saying about pathologizing everything? Because I feel like the cure is not getting on anti-Lexapro for these kids, right? Like putting everybody on in cognitive behavioral therapy, which some it may be helpful for. What do you see as sort of our way forward if we're now slapping this type of label on a whole generation of kids?
I think that's funny because what generation wasn't anxious?
Hey.
Like, let's be really real about it because I don't think that existed ever. I think people's anxiety manifests in different ways according to the challenges each generation has to navigate. And I think how it gets displayed is also a thing, right?
Yes.
Because maybe it's just more apparent in a certain generation, while others just buried it under.
And it like it maybe it looked like behavior.
It could have looked like anything. Overworking or the emotional disconnection from family and friends. It could look like, emotional distance. It could really look like anything. So I don't believe that there's a anxious generation. I think anxiety is chronically present because of the way that our societies are set up, our advancement of technologies, and our lack of awareness. You mentioned awareness before, and I think awareness is so major and it's hard because we feel anxious and then we're scared to look at the thing that's making us anxious.
I know, right? I know.
And then we're scared to sit with the feeling of anxiety. So we do stuff to distract ourselves. But we know that it's just the undercurrent of what we feel. And sometimes it just bubbles out when we don't want it to. And so I think the remedy is I think every generation's job is to do emotional work, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence. We that was not a part of my education. I learned reading. I learned writing. I learned math. I learned science.
We have to shift, right? And as a society support emotional intelligence.
We have to because technology is going to advance.
Yes.
We won't be able to slow that train down. And that's not in and of itself the problem.
Right.
The problem is the way that we engage with these things. So what? You have access to all the TV you could ever have in a lifetime. But if you learn something like self-regulation, self-awareness, knowing when, because I don't know about you, but when I'm binge watching, I start feeling irritable at a certain point.
I get sick on my stomach.
And I'm just like, why I feel so irritable?
Yeah.
It's because my eyes are taking in too much of this blue light. The TV is too zapped in, it's too toned in, and it's totally disconnected from what my body's doing. And then I'm just like, okay, I need to take a break from this and go outside and touch some grass or get some air or get some sun because my body it belongs to the earth. It doesn't belong to technology.
Yeah.
It belongs to the earth. So it needs regulation like the rest of living things. So emotional intelligence, awareness, education will help our kids be more in touch with themselves when they're doing certain things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important because I feel like a lot of technology, you have sort of a high vibe experience of technology that I feel like most of us don't engage with. But then you have like the business side, the marketing, the pulls to our attention to try to make us more, 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 more.
Yeah.
And so having that degree of body awareness, emotional intelligence for you to say, hey, I see what you're doing, awareness to say, hey, I see you vying for my attention and manipulating me emotionally to like give you my attention more, more, more. But I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
You know.
One as I was listening to you talk, I think about like the the model I like to share with some of my clients when I meet with them, and it's like understanding the body as a computer,
Mm.
right? Because the body as a computer, our society is largely attached to our minds
Mhm.
and our thinking and our brains, right? And by that I mean we're like, I think, therefore I am. Therefore I am. What? Who's that?
I forgot. It's the
It's
Draconian
one of those
philosophers,
philosophers that I
right?
can't remember.
Materialistic
Very much
mind.
in
Mhm.
the mind energy, and technology is very much mind energy if we think of like air energy. I know I'm
Mhm.
getting a little bit into like archetypal stuff,
Mhm.
but it's very much like that type of energy.
Very heady.
It's heady.
Mhm.
It's like taking all the energy from the lower parts of our bodies
Mhm.
and isolating it up
And
in
concentrating it
here.
up in here.
But the thing is, our brains work in concert with our
Yes.
entire bodies. And I say that if our bodies are computers, our brains are like, I don't know, like the hardware or the
Mhm.
motherboard. And the program
The
is
so
our software is
Mhm.
like our beliefs.
Yeah.
The software is the things that we attach ourselves to, those neural pathways that we develop around things,
Mhm.
you know, how we perceive and encode the information that's coming in. Like all that is the soft kind of things that happen within our brains. So we really need to make sure that we're connecting with our bodies because our brains are connected to our nervous system and our nervous system is a part of our spine and our spine is a part of our nerves and our nerves are a
Yes.
part of it goes everywhere in our body.
Y
So we do have other indications in our bodies of information that we gather outside of our heads. You know, it's
Mhm.
one example of that is when you experience heartbreak. I don't know about you, but I know, and asked other people, like
Mhm.
when we're talking about hard things, like emotional things or heavy emotional things, and I ask, where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel it in your body?
You feel it in your heart, in your
You
chest.
feel it in your heart and in your chest.
Yeah.
It tightens.
It
It
tightens.
constricts,
Yes.
right?
Heavy.
When you're in fear,
Mhm.
your gut usually,
Mhm.
right? Or other
Mhm.
places, your throat.
Throat,
Depends on
how it's
how it's moving in your body.
Mm.
So it just goes to show that we're whole
Yeah.
beings. So when we engage with things like technology that largely passes through our eyes and goes
Mhm.
straight through our brains, it sometimes disconnects us
Yeah.
from the others, our awareness of the other
Yeah.
sensations in our body.
That makes sense. And I think for you using the analogy like that, it makes it easy for people to understand. No wonder you feel off balance when you're constantly engaging with a primary center, when you have all these other energy centers that work in concert, but you're not giving space or attention
Yeah.
for them to like realign themselves and rebalance
Yeah.
themselves by going outside, by pausing, by turning off the TV, by stop scrolling. You know, these are the ways to like say, oh, I'm out of balance. Let me disconnect and let me integrate
Yeah.
again, right?
Let your body take in information in other places, and
Mm-hmm.
it can pass through your brain because our
Mm-hmm.
brain is kind of like
Yeah.
images are created, like it
Yes.
passes through our brain.
Yes.
But when we latch on so tightly, then it doesn't give a lot of space for us to find out other ways to solve our own problems.
That's right. Because I'm of the mind that a lot of the ills that we're complaining about, you know, all the books that people are writing about all these societal ills, and I'm of the mind that we have everything we need to cure and to heal. You know what I mean? Right here in this present
I
moment.
believe that too for everybody that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
and I hold that belief that they have
They have
everything
it.
that they need,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's a matter of just learning how to access that. And it's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy. Sometimes it can be disruptive,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I hold a lot of just compassion for
Yeah.
what it means to be human.
I know that's right.
Generally,
'Cause it's a lot, y'all.
it's
It's a lot.
hard. It's hard.
So, what I always like to talk about is sort of like the individual, you know, the personal, sort of what you can do to facilitate your own healing. on an individual level.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about that. So how do we then move to community healing? And, whether that's reaching out to a trusted professional and working together in a partnership or in a small group setting, what do you see as the role of guides and community in helping us through this process?
Um, I think community is actually really vital to our healing. Um, Sometimes community can be hard to access, especially with our age of technology, can be a bit isolating because people get to be, avatars and not
Mm-hmm.
embodied beings. But I strongly recommend connecting with other people. And as a therapist, I'm always open to helping my clients build community. As much as I deeply value kind of being like the point person for some
Mm-hmm.
people, um, I really I know that I have my limitations
Mm-hmm.
within my profession. I have my limitations as a person, as a human, with my
Yes.
education, with my experience. And I believe that a lot of things can be therapeutic. I
Yes.
think that talking to friends can be therapeutic. I
Mm-hmm.
think connecting with family can be therapeutic. I think holding babies can be therapeutic. I think
Mm-hmm.
petting dogs and cats can be therapeutic. I
Yes.
think sitting in the grass can be therapeutic.
Yes.
I think sitting in the sun or taking a walk or being near water. I think that there are so many things that this earth naturally provides us to
Mm-hmm.
help us heal, help us recover,
Mm-hmm.
and
Even our imagination. Yeah.
we have so many built-in tools for healing. Sometimes we do need to learn how to remove the obstacles so that we can access
Access
them.
them. Yeah.
But I think it's so important to be on track for building a toolbox because there will be times where one tool that you've been using just might not work
Mm-hmm.
anymore. It might fail
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reasons because nothing is permanent and everything is ever changing and evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a toolbox means that you get to pick from from the things that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So I love that you talked about how you as a therapist build sort of you try to build space for people to understand and know that their own community is a tool in their toolkit that they need.
Yeah.
So for you, what would you say is I would say the number one takeaway that you would tell people who are maybe just starting out, right? They just have like this awareness that like what has been working doesn't work. This just might be a lot of fear, all this anxiety. Oh, this depressed mood, this might just be fear based. What would you say is the sort of the next step in helping them sort of get curious or, you know,
To get the next step for getting them to get curious about their fear.
mhm. Yeah. And maybe moving through like past awareness, you know?
Yeah. So I try to reiterate
Okay.
fear,
Right.
a common denominator in both
Okay.
problems,
Okay.
So, and I use the word fear over anxiety because fear is more accessible for
Yes.
humans than like this pathologized
Mhm.
framework of a word. So I try to use fear directly,
Yeah.
right? And so that they can get used to asking that question. Because I think this is the start of
Mhm.
how you begin to learn your own tools. It's being able to ask yourself some questions and deepen your awareness, right?
Okay.
So the more we talk about fear as a common thing, the more we can identify when fear is at work. And the remedy for fear is to do it.
Yeah.
You have to create a new neural pathway. There is no other remedy
Yeah.
than to learn how to try to regulate your nervous system and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deep, deep breathing helps you to regulate your nervous system. There's so many things that can help you regulate your nervous system. Some people use medication to regulate their nervous system.
Mhm.
I'm not,
Mhm. Yeah.
against that. I think that it's just a knowing that I probably need to learn how to regulate my nervous system so that I can be even a little more at ease when I do a thing. Push past that discomfort because you gotta you
Mhm.
gotta do the uncomfortable thing. I'm so sorry, y'all. I wish it was easy. I wish it was easy, but it gets easier.
It does get easier.
When I sat down here to talk with you, my heart started pounding.
Yeah.
And I felt it, and I was like, "Oof, okay." We got some anxiety on board, a little
Yes.
fear on board. Now, what it is, sometimes you don't have time to sit and think about, well, what
Mm-mm.
is it?
Yeah.
But I just knew it in my body. So I just started to breathe
Mhm.
quietly, allowing my heart to slow down. Because the more you breathe, the more your heart rate will just continue to slow and slow and slow. And then once we started talking,
Yeah.
it just evened out.
Yeah. The doing of the thing, the doing of these tools, like these sound very simple when you talk about it in your head as like a concept, but the experience of taking a breath, taking a walk, getting in the grass, connecting to a friend, like the experience of the thing is really the power. Is
Yes.
is really the power. And so don't let your mind trick you into being like, that's not enough. That's too simple. That's too
And
easy.
don't let your mind trick you into believing it's not normal.
Right.
Your body is doing the most normal thing it can do.
Yes.
The programs might be the thing that's creating
Right.
the, excitation or that
Hmm.
activation to begin. So we can work on programs, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to dismantle programs and tell
Hmm.
ourselves, not actually not unsafe. Me
Right.
sitting here talking with you is not unsafe for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that
Hmm.
and that I'll be okay, even if I'm nervous or jittery or my voice shakes.
Hmm.
Right. So we have to tell ourselves, like, it's not abnormal. Our bodies are doing a very natural thing to help us regulate, even
Yes.
in the anxiety,
Yes.
because it's just an indicator
It is.
that your
It's
brain is
information.
translating something as dangerous or
Yeah.
harmful or scary.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, so
Yeah.
we gotta activate around this. And
Yeah.
you have to tell your body, no,
Actually,
you don't need to
you
activate
don't need
around
to
this
activate around
particular.
this.
There's some things you might need to activate around.
And it's not one.
This is
Yeah.
not one of them.
I love that. I love that. Um, okay, how can people keep up with you? Like what are you doing? What are you doing next? What's the
Well, I am, still practicing as a
Yes.
therapist. I also am a coach.
Mhm.
I really appreciate the coaching space. I'm also an intuitive. I work
Mhm.
very intuitively with people. We didn't really get into just how my intuition works. Maybe we'll
Yes.
have a different episode
We
for
will have
that.
several episodes.
all of the gifts.
Yeah.
And I lean into that a lot in my
Yeah.
work.
Which I
So
think is so cool because to go back what you were talking about, literally, I think the more diverse your toolkit is for you, it just makes it you are diverse. It matches your interests, what you're let called to, what you are inspired by at the time. So if you have tools to match that, I think what a gift that is. And then
yeah,
what a gift it is to be in community and connection with you to reflect that back at somebody. Like, have you tried this? What about this? Does this feel right? Does this,
yeah,
normalizing that sort of curiosity and that expansiveness. So I love
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. I have, and to add, I really enjoy doing guided meditations. So I'm kind of in the process of expanding,
Yeah.
my work at this point, but you can catch me at the Mindful Gray
Yeah.
on Instagram. Yeah, I'm not a huge social
Social
media
media.
girly,
That's fine.
but you know what? I jump on and I do post when I'm doing events and
Yeah.
things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm always open to connecting.
Mhm.
I'm about to go on a little bit of a little sabbatical
Yes.
because your girl needs to do some deep resting after the year of
We're
2025.
wintering. We're wintering, y'all.
It was,
Hmm. Yeah.
sometimes we need to take the
A
breaks.
longer break.
We might crash and burn just minimally, but let's hopefully we can catch it before then. But sometimes we don't, and still
Happens with it.
we want to hold
Yeah.
ourselves with love, compassion, and grace,
Awesome.
and do what we need to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Thank you, you guys. Definitely, this episode is something to share. This is not something for you just to consume. All right. We're starting a movement. So share, like, follow the show so that we can begin to create an awareness around this type of healing, whole healing mind, body, and spirit, and in community. So thanks again. I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you.